Good evening. I'd like to call our January 12th USD 305 regular board meeting to order. My name is Gabe Grant, President of the USD 305 Board of Education, and I'd like to welcome all those who are joining us virtually. If you'd like to follow along with the meeting, you can access the agenda packet by going to the district website, www.usd305.com. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Moving on to item 3, approval of the agenda. There is an amendment to the personnel report, and we do not need an executive session for personnel, item 10A. Someone would like to move to approve that?
Move we approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you. In a second. Thank you. And just to make everyone also aware, board member Jim Fletcher is joining us by phone. He's conferenced here in this room. There's a motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Jim?
Aye.
That motion carries 7-0. Moving on to item 4A, presentation from Salina Arts and Humanities and the Arts Infusion Program with Anna Posh.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me. So my name is Anna Pauscher-Morowitz. I am the Arts Education Coordinator with Salina Arts and Humanities, a department of the City of Salina. I'm here to share with you about our Arts Infusion Program, the adaptations that were made in the wake of the pandemic, and changes to public health guidelines, as well as teaching artist work in the classrooms. So respecting teachers' time and energy was of utmost importance while we were adapting our program for the 2020-2021 school year. We used models inspired by a national leader in arts integration, the Kennedy Center, and their teaching arts program. We worked with our local teaching artists in the redevelopment of their content to a virtual format. This included our support through video equipment and video production. We also discussed changes and expectations with our Arts Infusion Teacher Advisory Committee, which is a independent committee of about 10 teachers from USD 305, our teaching artists, and USD 305 staff. So you all have received a copy of the guide. Because of the digital distribution this year in particular, the alternative planning timeframe and city budget constraints, we did pare down the production of the guide. This was distributed to teachers and staff via email on December 2nd, 2020. By the end of this month, we will have distributed over 250 pre-recorded video sessions, and we're in the process of scheduling about 180 live video sessions with our classrooms. All of the sessions offered are in a virtual format. They're either pre-recorded videos or live video sessions. Our local teaching artists and cultural organizations produce their own video sessions, and those are shared with classrooms via YouTube links. These videos offer flexible use in a variety of settings. Teaching artists are also available, as I mentioned, to do the live video sessions. And those were open to virtual platforms, but it seems to be most teachers prefer us to just send a Zoom link. Sometimes those are projected in a classroom. I think that's actually most common, is that they'll just be projected in the classroom. So when it's safe, we are excited to return to our usual programming, or perhaps a hybrid of that would include the use of video communication more than we had in the past. Our teaching artists are very much looking forward to working in classrooms when it's safe. We're also excited for opportunities to invite new visiting artists to Salina to work with our students. So finally, I'd like to thank the USD 305 Board of Education for your continued support of the Arts Infusion Program and arts in our schools and community. So I'd love to answer any questions if there are any.
our group.
Yes. Thank you
Very
so
appreciative
much.
of the partnership, and thanks for all you do for our students.
Same. Thank you for everything you all are doing also. Thank you.
Item 4B on our agenda, Renaissance Teacher of the Month Award recipients with Jennifer.
Good evening. Tonight, we'll recognize Teachers of the Month, November through December 2020, by reading their names, their buildings, and the subjects they teach. We will mail a special certificate and a small token of our appreciation for their commitment to the students of Salina Public Schools. You can read more about them on our USD 305 website. Central High School Teachers of the Month, November, Shelby Dinkle, Journalism Teacher. December, Julie Opat, Special Education English Teacher. Lakewood Middle School, November, Anna Deschamps, 7th grade school counselor. December, Robert Black, 6th grade social studies teacher. South High School, November, Paula Roche, Spanish teacher. December, Tina Donnelly, adaptive special education teacher. November, PJ Turner, 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher. December, Sarah Floyd, 7th grade reading teacher. Thank you.
Congratulations. Board policy BCBI, public participation, states that the board may include a time for public forum and may permit, at the discretion of the board president, public comment during agenda items. During these meetings, however, with limited members of the public, we will not open for comments, and we encourage patrons to email the board with comments by going to our website, usd305.com, and clicking on the Board of Education tab. Moving on to item 5, approval of the consent agenda items. Those include minutes of the December 8th, 2020 regular meeting, the personnel report and its amendment, financial reports, including the December's bills list, November treasurer's report, November investment report, November journal entries, approval of an encumbrance listing to Century Business Systems in the amount of $171,681.05 for the multi-year copier service agreement. Approve the resolution to establish election of board officers. Elections will be held at the first meeting in July 2021, as is the requirement of KSA 72-1133. And approve the resolution to establish the board's regular meeting dates. The 2021-2022 meeting dates will be approved at the first meeting in July 2021 as per the requirement of KSA 72-1138. Is there a motion to approve those?
President, I
Yes.
move we approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Thank you. In a second. In a second. Motion and a second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Jim?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Item 5A, Board Governance and Operating Procedures Handbook Revisions with Superintendent Exton.
I am just back tonight to talk to you about the board governance and operating procedure updates that we discussed at the last meeting. If you look at item 6A in your packet, that's what we'll actually be discussing. Essentially, the updates were just the vision and mission and strategic plan goals to reflect what our community listening sessions guided you to adopt as a Board of Education. And so we would like to make sure that your board operating procedures reflect that hard work from last spring. And then also the board organization. And in that section of your operating procedures, we were just trying to delineate how nominations would occur and what the board's succession would look like to try to provide some guidance to the board. So with that, I am open to answer any questions.
No, sir.
Further discussion? Jim?
Aye.
That motion carries 7-0. Item 5B, attendance hour waiver.
Okay, recently, the Kansas Board of Education approved that school districts could use up to 20 hours of in-service time, staff development time, collaboration time, parent-teacher conference time for a one-to-one student attendance hour. Usually, those days that are staff development in nature only count for a half of an attendance day. And as you know, state law requires that we offer 1,116 student contact hours in our school. And so what I am recommending to you is that we take advantage of this opportunity. What this would mean is that we would be able to add days in the spring that would allow our teachers to collaborate. You'll remember that we had extensive discussions late summer about changing the calendar so that we could have plenty of time for staff and teachers and administrators to make sure that we had all of the COVID provisions in place for the beginning of the school year. What that means is that all of our in-service days were front-loaded at the beginning of the year. Usually those are interspersed throughout the year, leaving only one in-service day where teachers could work on plans, collaboration, that kind of thing during the school year. What this would allow us to do is the next agenda item, which would be to exchange several student contact days for collaboration days to allow our teachers that much needed time that the Kansas State Board of Education has said they're recognizing that this is a need statewide. And so in order for our teachers to have some of that time to work on plans, develop resources, identify digital content that they can use with students, collaborate, and just do some long-range planning, that we would recommend making that change. So in order to do that, we have to have a waiver submitted to the Kansas State Department of Education. And the board president will have to sign that waiver, and I will have to sign that waiver. But we have to have the collective board's approval first to be able to submit that. And so that's what I'm asking you to approve this evening.
Question, I recommend move approving the KSC's our waiver and
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. And item 5C, adjustments to the 2020-2021 school calendar.
Okay, so this is a follow-up from the waiver that you just approved. And the recommendation that I'm bringing forth to you tonight is to add what we're calling Connect to Learn days. I had a conversation with our teachers shortly before Christmas break, if I remember right, and asked them if we would do this, what would be the best use of these days for you to be able to best meet students' needs. And the feedback that I got both online and after the fact via email and through my conversation with our NEA, the president and vice chair, that group, was that the Connect to Learn days was what they felt like would be most beneficial. And so what we also received some feedback on when those should be placed. And so I want to show you where we would place those and why. Okay, so the first, you'll see that there were no days in February where students were not in attendance. And so what we're recommending is that we make February 8th a Connect to Learn day. Teachers would be on site. They would use that for collaboration. Students would not be in attendance. That would give us a long weekend and would give us a little bit of a buffer as far as COVID goes. Then we're recommending February 26th. And the reason for that date, I had a teacher reach out to me and say it would be really good. We're giving our ESL teachers give an assessment that they will be wrapping up at about that time, and it requires hand grading. And they said if we could get one kind of end of February, that would be really helpful for us. And she actually asked, could we do the 26th? And so that's where the 26th came from. those tests take quite a bit of time to actually score. And then the last date is in April. We had no days in April set aside for collaboration staff work at all. And so we are recommending April 19th as a date to do that. That will allow our teachers to work on plans that would get them kind of through the end of the year. They would also be able to perhaps look at students who are needing some additional supports during the summer and try to strategize for how we might be able to provide those. And so April 19th is the last date. So what I am asking you to do is adjust our school calendar. We would trade those 3 student attendance days for 3 collaboration days. They will count exactly the same as far as going towards that 1,116 hours. And that's what's allowed by the waiver that you just approved. So questions that you have?
Remember, then, 4 days in May, the first to the, we add those on back in the summer when we were originally drafting.
Yeah, anything that's yellow on there was an additional student day, because you'll remember that the students were supposed to come back the 24th, and we bumped their first day back clear until the 31st to allow us to have some of these collaboration days at the beginning of the year. And so we did add those additional days at the end of the year. And one of the things that the teachers were really wanting when we were talking about the calendar was to still try to get out before the end of May, and that allowed us to do that. We were really lucky with how the calendar fell this year, frankly.
So I think I know the answer I was wondering, the deep orange ones that we've added, what color should they have been? If they're on the key up there, and I guess they should have been light orange.
They would
is
have
that
been
right?
this light orange color. We just
Okay.
made them dark orange so that I would know which ones they were when I was talking to you tonight.
Right, okay, I got it, thank you.
Any other questions from the group? Questions from Jim on the phone?
I don't have any. I think that this is a great opportunity for our staff. I don't know how well you can hear me.
Well,
I think it's greatly appreciated by our staff. Going through the first part of the year was very stressful for them, and hopefully this will help to get them through the second part as well, and with the students as well.
very good. No other questions, motion?
I have a motion.
Yes.
I move we approve the 2020-2021 calendar adjustments as presented.
In a second. Deanna. Everyone at once. I can only pick one, unfortunately. Motion in a second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Jim?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank
you
you.
very much. Next item up, item 6D, Families First Coronavirus Response Act, Employer Paid Leave with Aaron Wright.
Good evening.
Hello.
As you all know, we're all still dealing with the effects of the COVID pandemic, even despite the fact that it is now 2021. However, earlier this year, Congress enacted the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. Within that act, it included an employer mandate that included us to pay up to 2 weeks paid leave for someone who needed to be absent from work due to essentially COVID concerns related to isolation or quarantine or testing. That act expired December 31st, and those paid leave provisions were not included in the stimulus package that they provided at the end of last year. And yet, COVID still goes on. We still have people who need to isolate, quarantine, and be at home during that time for testing purposes. So, our proposal to you tonight is to extend the use of that leave that was already provided or set aside for employees last semester. If that same up to 2 weeks, up to 80 hours, depending on what the ordinary work schedule would be for the employee during that time. Some people it's a little less than 80 hours.
but in no case does it go over the 80 hours. Many people have not utilized that entire amount at this point in their leave, and we would simply request that you extend that leave to be used through the end of this school year, or June 30th, 2021. The second portion for the same, I'm sorry, I should mention that it would be for the same conditions that were provided under the federal leave. They wouldn't get additional over those 2 weeks. It would simply be whatever was remaining as of December 31st, they would get to carry that over and use that through the summer. We also are proposing coverage for individuals who have exhausted leave, should they be exposed in the workplace. We would follow anyone who's required to quarantine or isolate due to a workplace exposure. Then we would also provide paid leave for the duration of that quarantine or isolation as ordered by the health department. We're recommending that you do this, and we don't anticipate and leave a use increased from last semester. Hopefully the vaccine will start being distributed and we will find fewer and fewer leave days for this purpose. Do you have any questions on the proposal?
Questions from anyone here?
We don't have.
This would get used first. Once those, what we call FFCRA leave, once those are used, then absence exposure outside the workplace for a COVID-related reason would fall to their regular leave balances.
Have we had many exposures in school, at work?
I don't have the specific numbers for you on that, but I can tell you that it has been limited. There have been very few exposures, and Lynn might be able to speak better to this, but there have been very few specific exposures due to school-based activities. People find themselves in a positive situation, having had come to school, and then we end up quarantining, but there's very little transmission, as I understand it.
What I would say is that at the elementary level, we have had quite a few teachers and staff who have had to be quarantined as a result of exposure at school. At middle school, high school, because we only have half of the students in, the ability to stay 6 feet away is easier. At the elementary level, especially when you're dealing with kindergarten, first, second grade students, the need to be nearby as you're teaching them to read, as you're teaching them mathematics, so we are having some exposure there. And what we did, though, was we looked at how many people had been quarantined more than once as a result of a school-based exposure. Not very many. But I don't want to mislead and make you think that we have staff members that are having to quarantine because they were exposed at school.
And I'm sorry, I should have clarified that I was referencing positive, so people who become sick due to a response at school, I should have clarified that. That was the numbers that I was referring to.
Does that answer your question, Ann?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, thank you.
That was going to be my question. How difficult is it to figure out if somebody was exposed to work?
Yeah, so what our process, it works pretty slick. We've gotten good at this, Dana. But what we do is when the health department calls us and tells us that there has been a positive case, and they've identified the positive case that occurred from wherever, okay? They call us and say, this particular person was positive, and then at that point, our nurses and our building principals start to work to identify, okay, who would have met the criteria of being a close contact, who was within 6 feet for 10 or more minutes. And then they identify those people, and then they work with the health department to determine, okay, here's what we think, what do you think? And then the health department says, yes, that's the group of people that needs to be quarantined. And then at that point, we know if the teacher is on that list, we know that it was a school-related exposure that happened that caused the quarantine. Okay. So it just takes some time, but it really does start with that call from the health department where we know that we've had somebody in school with an active case.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this item?
I should also mention, I did not include this in the proposal, but I thought it also important to mention that it's board policy GBRH that allows the board to create leave under pretty much whatever circumstance it so desires to do so.
No other questions? I would entertain a motion. Yes.
I move we approve the extension of the FFCRA leave hours through June 30th, 2021 as
Thank you. In a second. Second, Ian. I've got a motion. In a
Mr.
second.
President,
Yes, sir.
prior to your vote, I'm going to excuse myself due to a potential conflict of interest with this policy.
Thank you. Jim has excused himself. Then there's a motion in a second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's it on our action agenda. Moving on to the discussion agenda. And item 7A, Kansas Education System Accreditation, or KESA, update from Shannon Rector and Heidi Pugh. A rolling slate of presenters this evening.
Yes. And actually, my job is very easy for this one. I just want to be able to say, let me help here real quick. There you go. You go ahead and start it. So actually, Heidi is going to be presenting today. She is the Director of Staff Development and Accreditation, and so we are part of the Educational Programs Department, and many years of effort and energy on Heidi's behalf in the Kansas Educational Systems Accreditation. And I am new to this department. Our department is new, so I have not been side by side with her during this whole 5 years, but I have had a part in it, so I'm excited to have her update the board in regards to KESA.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you tonight. My purpose tonight is to review some of the major components of KESA and talk about some of the things that we've already completed in the KESA accreditation process, and then tell you some of our next steps. By the way, KESA is the acronym for Kansas Education Systems Accreditation. And we never say the long title, we always say KESA. Okay, just as a reminder, the accreditation process is a 5-year cycle. And it's also a systems approach to accreditation, where in the past, they accredited buildings instead of the district as a whole. And this is a systems approach where the system is accredited. During that 5-year cycle, there are there's multiple things that happen in a cycle, but some of the main components or the main fixture of a year are listed above. And so some of the things during that first year involve a needs assessment, which I'm going to talk a little bit about what we did. And then you can see there that year 2 was goal setting and action planning. And then in years 3 and 5, there's implementation and refinement. The thing to keep in mind is that we're constantly moving through those too, though. But the main focus of an accreditation cycle is what's listed there. During year 1, as I mentioned, this was the year that we worked a lot with the needs assessment. The first 4 items up there kind of focus on the needs assessment itself. One of the first things, some things work simultaneously together, but one of the things that we did was we looked at the rubrics, and you might remember that we called them the R rubrics at that time. And there were 4 of them. There was relationships, relevance, responsive culture, and rigor. And then we also looked at, we analyzed the KESA data, or the results data, and the results was the 5th R in those R's that KESA talked about. Those results areas included kindergarten readiness, IPS, social emotional factors, graduation rate, and post-secondary success. While we were looking at while we were looking through those two things, one of our tasks was to select 2 goal areas to focus on, and that was a directive from KSDE. We ended up selecting relevance and responsive culture through kind of was really a year-long process because, and I know that we've spoke of this before, I think before the board, but we really did an in-depth study, not only at the district level, but in all of the buildings and with various different departments and groups. They all participated in that process. Relevant, just as a reminder, relevance included, the relevance rubric included things like curriculum, instruction, and student engagement. And then responsive culture focused on leadership, early childhood, and climate, school climate or district climate. We kind of felt that those 2 areas both, they spoke to what we thought would get us the farthest as far as picking something in KISA and using the rubrics to pick it. We thought that would get us the most bang for our buck at the time. One of the final pieces there that is listed that we did for the needs assessment is we evaluated the compliance issues and the foundational structures. Compliance issues are fairly simple because those are the laws and the regulations that we have to follow. So those are usually in line, and they are, so that they have never been an issue. Foundational structures are some of the basic skills that that the state of Kansas determined that all students should have, and they included some things. There's 8 things on the list, but some of the things that are included include civic engagement, basic communication skills, and what else did I put down here? Diversity and equity was like another one. So we looked at all of those kinds of things, and we came up with our 2 goal areas, which I mentioned. And then after we had done that, we had, well, not actually after, I'm sorry. Simultaneously, we did a lot of these things. They were going on at the same time. We had to inform our staff and our stakeholders, which included, we had lots of things to teach the staff about the different components of KISA, because like the rubrics and the vision and the mission and all of those things that were put together by the state had to be explained. Luckily, the state did a lot of work and created videos to go with it, so that helped us. And then at the end of that first year, we had our first visitation. And I know we spoke of this before, but our first visitation was not an on-site visit. We actually had a visit at Smoky Hill, and it was when we got together with a cohort, and it included representatives from Junction City, Hayes.
Is it Emporia?
Yeah, Emporia. Emporia is our chair. So it included some like schools, and we specifically were involved in picking a number of schools that we thought would help us, that were like size. So that kind of took care of the first year. In year 2, as I mentioned, that's all about setting goals and action planning. One of the first things that our KISA district leadership team did, oh, I forgot to turn it, sorry. One of the first things that our district leadership team did was create some goals to get us going. And what we decided to do was match up the rubrics that we had chosen, or the goal areas, with a results area. So we matched up responsive culture and social emotional, and that's where we came up with our first 2 goals. The first one had to do with kindergarten readiness, and that was one that buildings weren't asked to participate in. That is something we took care of at the district level. And then the third goal on there had to do with our relevance goal that was paired or married with post-secondary success. And we kind of, I will be honest with you, at the time we thought we were pretty smart because we had put those together to get the most bang for our buck. So it was an exciting time. Then in year 2 took a few more things that happened there. we really spent a lot of time at the district level and with the district leadership team creating plans and action plans. The buildings were hard at work at that. We spent a lot of time also at the district level meeting with building leadership and supporting them and helping them. And then another focus was on, we started to focus on what are the areas, if these are our goals and this is where we're headed and these are the actions we want to complete, what professional development do we need? And some of the things that came out of that to go with our 2 goal areas was for the social emotional goal and responsive culture, it involved trauma-informed practices. That was at all the elementaries were working on those kinds of things. PBS and soft skills were something that the high schools really focused on. And then academically for post-secondary, we focused on math conceptual development, ELA unit implementation. We really made a lot of advances in creating IPS in a better way that helped more students plan for their future. And then we also focus some on rigor. In year 3, which was last year, it was humming along really well for quite a while, until about February, as I recall. We continued to implement at the district and building level our action plans, and then we also continued with the professional development as it was needed. It continued in those same areas. The big thing for year 3 was this mid-cycle review, which strangely I really enjoyed. I don't know if the buildings did or if we did at the district level, but I kind of enjoyed it. It was an opportunity to, and you can see the bullets under there that go with that. It was an opportunity to look back, even though it's only year 3, we were able to look back at the rubrics again, and we just looked at the 2 that we had focused on and rate ourselves again. And we did that at the district level, we did that at the building level. They shared it, we looked at it. It was neat to see the areas that we had made progress in, and then it was neat also to see there were some places where we scored ourselves really high on the rubric, but now we knew more, and now we scored ourselves a little bit more where we belonged. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but you know, it was interesting what came of it, because we were able to learn that we had learned more through the process and over time. And also, during year 3, that's when Mrs. Exline was working on the strategic plan listening tour and doing all of those kinds of things. So then that kind of comes up here soon to year 4. But some of the things we know that we're going to do in year 4 and that are already in progress or have already happened is, and I think I was here when Mrs. Exline spoke to you about the fact that we met with our OVT chair and talked to him about the new strategic plan and how we were going to tie it in with our current KISA goals. So we did that, and then we continued implementing our plans. We have started to do that. The thing is, this year, though, the focus has been, because of COVID, we've really had to make the buildings understand that we're not going to be able to move forward as fast as we were. And we're not going to get where you thought you were going to go, because we have so many things that they're dealing with. But what we ask them to do is to work extra hard to maintain the progress that we've made. So to look at the actions and the steps that they've put in place and make sure that they're still in place and that we don't lose them while we're going through COVID. We will have a visit at the end of this year. I'm not sure yet whether that will be an on-site visit or a virtual visit. It'll kind of depend on the situation at the time. Now, these are some things that we've started and some things that we still have to work on, or that we know we have to work on. And this is in tying KISA with the new strategic plan. One of the things that we know we need to do and knew we needed to do was restructure the district leadership team. And one of the reasons is our district leadership team we were up to like 18 or 19 members. Our district leadership team kept getting bigger and bigger. And the reason it kept getting bigger and bigger is because we kept trying to bring the right people to the table that could help us do the work we needed to do, and we had to bring in the right expertise. And so now moving forward with the new strategic plan, we're going to go at this just a little bit different. And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to restructure that district leadership team, which is going to be a smaller group. And then we're going to create task force that are going to focus on the 3 new goal areas of the strategic plan. So we have already identified our leadership for each one of the goal areas. Our next steps are to recruit the remaining new strategic plan task force members. And we're really looking at bringing teachers on board who are the experts in the field and are experts in those areas. So we're spending a lot of time trying to make sure that we can recruit the right people. And then we're hoping we can talk them into joining us. So once we get our task force together, some of the things that we expect the task force to do or to work on is to help create an articulation of the why for the strategic goals. We want to make sure that they understand it and that we're all able to share it with the building so that everybody understands the why before we start to move forward. And then that strategic plan task force for each one of the areas is going to identify the measures that we're going to use to measure our progress for the new goals. And I think that's going to be a tough task, and it's going to be one that I think we're up to. Then finally, what we hope to do here still in year 3 is to create action plans that tie the new strategic plan goal with the current KISA goals. So that's quite a job we have yet to finish here in year 4, but we think we're up to the task. Okay, and then year 5 will be our last year in the accreditation cycle, and some things we're expecting to happen then is at the beginning of year 5, we're hoping that our task force has solidified those action plans enough that buildings are able to start transitioning to the new action plans and tying KISA with the new strategic plan goals. And then year 5 is kind of similar to year 3 and year 1 in that they ask us to analyze our progress using the KISA rubrics again, so that's something we'll look at again. And then reevaluate our compliance and foundational structures, and then have our final OVT visit. We anticipate, usually they like to do that final one early, so I anticipate that might be in late March of 2022. And then my guess is that we would find out about accreditation possibly in the summer at some point, find out our status. So that's kind of a picture of where we've been and where we're headed. Are there any questions you might have?
I just want to say, it's not really a question, but the KISA document is an impressively detailed assessment, and I appreciate whoever did all that writing and all the stuff behind the writing, all the collection of information.
Are you talking about the annual report or?
I don't know, just the, guess what we read.
What?
Is that what it was?
Is that what you were talking about? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I forgot to mention in my presentation, I meant to say something. When I talked about the mid-cycle review, I was going to remind you that you had gotten that systems annual report for year 3 in the last Friday packet, so you would have seen the results of that.
Yes, that's what
I was
I'm
just
talking
going to
about.
bring that up. That's what I meant to do.
Thank you for all that work.
Oh, sure. Yes.
Just out of curiosity, really, so year 6, do we start over again at year 1, or do they give you a breather, or how does
No.
that all work out?
No, actually in year 5, you start making preparations to start over in year 1. So, and the thing is that like everything we do in education, we continue to build the plane in the air, and they are still doing that with KISA. So just, like you talked about the report, they're actually changing the reports now. It's not even posted for year 4 for me to start filling in. So there's constantly changes, but we anticipate that with the new strategic plan, we will be in good position and set to really move into year one pretty solid because of all the work we've done to get here.
Very good, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Appreciate your work. And Shannon Richter back with us for item 7B, update on district virtual programs.
Good evening. This is going to be just a general update in the sense of, if you remember in November, I came and spoke to you about virtual programs and started to talk a little bit about planning and what we need to look at. And so from that presentation, I talked about that there's going to be considerations for virtual expansion, longitudinal enrollment data, funding, staffing, and cost impacts, student needs, alignment with current programs, and technology infrastructure and resources. I'm not going to speak to all of those today. This will be an ongoing process. I'm just wanting to make sure that I'm keeping the board up to date as we go through this process of identifying how we want to move forward with virtual programming. One of the things that we've looked at over the last month is longitudinal enrollment data. And so looking at what happens within our district, when we have students that are enrolled in Salina Public Schools and leave our schools, we actually code it into our system and we look at where did they go when they withdrew from USD 305. And so as we looked at the last 5 years of data and looking at our information, we were really focused on what happens with our homeschool students and virtual programs. So I went through all of the data, and it's thousands of lines of data, to say, okay, where did these students go? So we looked at the withdrawal data, and from the information that we had available in our system, I was able to look at each year and identify elementary, middle, and high school students that left at some point during that school year to go to either a homeschool or a virtual program. And from that data, we see that we've had 358 students over the last 5 years leave USD 305. They still live in our residency, so they still live in our city, but they've either gone to a homeschool or they've gone to a virtual program. And I do want to say that that 358 probably is a lower number than we would have in actuality, because many times our registrars and our building personnel would put virtual program, but there were times that it was referenced that there might have been a Lawrence school or another school district that had a virtual program, but it only had the title of the district. If it only had the title of the district, I did not make the assumption that they went to a virtual school. They could have moved to that area. So the count for the 358 is only students that I could tell from the information entered in the withdrawn codes and with the data there that they actually went to a homeschool or virtual school. So when you think about that longitudinal data, that's 358 students that we would have been able to work with more directly in our schools if they would have stayed with us. And there's a whole reason why students may have left USD 305, and I'll kind of get to trying to find out a little bit of that information. But when we think about that impact, there is a huge budget impact to that aspect. And so if you look at the loss of enrollment that we've had over the last 5 years, we would see that as basically a $1.8 million impact on our budget over the last 5 years. Some years a little bit more based upon, how many students, but that is a huge impact that we have felt, and we have seen our declining enrollment, and that is something that we have been keeping our eye on, but it really wasn't until this year and looking and thinking through what we have learned from COVID to look at those numbers a little differently. And so we looked at that impact, and we also looked at the fact that when we think about the students that we have now in remote, those are not students that are no longer in our district. Those are students that we have right now. And when we started this school year, we had close to 700 students that had chosen remote. We're now down to under 400 students that are in remote. But when you think about the impact that we have here in our district right now, we've been able to provide services to them remotely, but we don't know what 21-22 will look like from the state. And really, we believe that the remote option will go away. But we still may find that we have a need in our district for a virtual program. And so when I'm up here today, I'm basically saying that we have a virtual reality ahead of us. We know that we've lost students at all levels, elementary, middle, and high school. And we know that we've lost them to homeschool and to other virtual programs. We have that data. So what we need to do is we need to think about what is it that we want to do for our community. We do want to be the place that students choose to attend in Salina. And so we need to think through how is it that we can have those students still participate in our school district. And so we have to look at our programs and our offerings. And so we know that we have lost students due to homeschool, to virtual schools, and we also are in right now this impact of COVID. And with that, in 2021, we don't know what that impact will be. If we're still under a situation to where we are having precautions into place, we may have many families that want to continue with the remote option. If the state doesn't allow us to have a remote option, then the only other thing for these families to do is a virtual program. And so when I say virtual reality, I think that is our reality in our district. We have to be prepared to say that we are getting ahead of the situation and design a virtual program that gives us the flexibility to meet the students' needs in our district and maybe meet needs that have always been there that we didn't have the opportunity to meet before. And then also make sure that we're leveraging resources. A virtual program or a virtual school is a huge endeavor. It takes resources, it takes thinking differently, it takes different training, and we have learned many things this year from our remote program. So kind of taking that all into place, what we're going to do over the next few months is kind of go through this process. We know our longitudinal data is telling us that we have a large number of students that we've already lost to our district. We have students right now that are remote students with us, and we are thankful that we were able to offer that program to them. But if we don't have remote available to us, we could lose a large number of students again next year in a single year. And so what we're going to do in February is we're going to go ahead and continue our application for virtual program. We've always been approved for a 9-12 program. We're going to continue that, and we're going to make sure that we give ourselves the ability to look beyond that. So we will apply for the K-12 ability to do a virtual program. We're also going to look at stakeholder groups and survey stakeholder groups. We have the names of all of our remote students right now that we've been working for. You know, what is their intention? If remote was not an option for them, would they stay in Salina Public Schools or would they look elsewhere? So we have this audience, stakeholders that we need to ask directly, but we also have the ability to ask some of the students and families, why did you leave Salina in 1819? Why did you leave Salina in 1920? And so we're going to look back and reach out to some of those families and see if we can find some information of why did they choose to go to a virtual program or to a homeschool program. Taking all of that data along with the lessons learned from our remote students this year and talking with our principals about the needs that we have in our buildings, we'll look and develop a program that's based upon the need, but we also have to look at it from a feasibility aspect. Do we have the resources, the personnel, the infrastructure, and so forth? I will bring back a detailed plan to you in March that will have both short-term and long-range virtual program kind of proposal, because I think that we have to look at this at multiple levels and a multiple-year plan. And then, so we'll have you look at that in March to give feedback, ask questions, and give direction, and then I'll bring it to you in April for a final action item. And then that will allow us to, depending upon what the decision is, to make sure that we have things aligned for enrollment, for communicating to our public about what our intent is for 21-22. So more information to come, but I did want to give you that longitudinal data and the budget impact, because I think that that's also something that we have to look at, and that really, I think, kind of solidifies that virtual is a reality, but we have control over what that reality looks like and what programs we design. Any questions?
Yes, Dan?
Yes.
Do you have a sense of how the how other other districts' virtual programs work? Do they have any requirements, like if they're going to be virtual, they have to have a parent with them, or do they? Is it pretty wide open? You just
Well, there is a virtual program guidelines, and right now we're working under the remote guidelines. And if you remember, at the beginning of the year, we had the 385 days and the daily contact. So they gave us some remote guidelines to follow. A virtual program has specific count days. They have specific requirements for the amount of contact that you have with students, what kind, the truancy, attendance, all of that has parameters that you have to follow for a virtual program. And so what I've been doing is I've been reaching out to other programs to learn from them and to gain insight. I've already spoken with the director at Smoky Valley, and I have contacts with Lawrence and Olathe. And so we'll be looking at the programs, looking at lessons learned, looking at best practice research to help us make decisions.
So if they, well, these parameters, are they KSDE or are they somebody else?
They're KSDE, yeah.
Okay.
The Kansas Department of Education has basically guidelines that they provide to all schools that outlines what is required of the school. There's professional development guidelines. There's guidelines on, they'll mentor us if we decide to expand, connect us with the school district. And so, yeah, there's a ton of guidelines that we would have to follow. And that's what I want to be able to speak to you in detail when I come back in March.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No questions. I'm just really glad we're doing this. Remember back when we first started talking about it, it's a great study.
Yeah, thank you. We're excited to be able to meet students' needs in our community.
Thank you for your work.
Welcome.
Moving on, discussion agenda item 7C, athletic advertising proposal, Superintendent Exline, and it looks like some athletic directors have been swept from the green room, so.
That's exactly right. They can answer questions that I can't. Okay, Mr. Stonebreaker, Mr. Maring, and I are here on behalf of the USD 305 Athletic Board, and we just want to present to you for your consideration an advertising proposal. I want to start with a little bit of background, and then once we get into the real nuts and bolts of the proposal, I'll turn it over to the gentleman. But I do want to review with you just kind of the why. We know, and you have been committed for years to our extracurricular activities because you know the benefits of that programming to students. We know that there's increased engagement in school. The research is clear that there is a strong impact on academic performance, and that kids that are involved in extracurricular activities are engaged in real-time goal setting in a way that's very meaningful to them. That collective goal attainment is so important to development. And so lots of reasons that a strong extracurricular program is important, and that we appreciate that you have historically supported that. We do have right now 14 extracurricular options, and we have the female versions and male versions of those, and we have expanded options in the last 8 years, and so I want to talk a little bit about that. The reality is that we have increased costs in our extracurricular programs, and that's okay because we know the importance of those. But in 2013-14, you'll remember that our middle schools were looking to join a middle school league. And at the time, in order to do that, we had to have 7th grade athletics to be able to be considered to be part of the league. That was a positive thing for our students anyway. And our board made the decision that we would add 7th grade football, volleyball, basketball, and 7th and 8th grade cross country. Those were things that needed to be in place for us to be in the league and for us to be competitive with the counter schools. And so at that time, coaching salaries, we committed $69,000 to coaching salaries, and that's the actual amount there that Lisa gave me. Uniform replacement, we added $10,000 to the uniform replacement annual line because of the increased number of students who were participating. We added $20,000 to the annual transportation budget to allow our students to get to and from those events. We added an additional $15,000 to $16,000 for supplies and equipment. And then the events expenses, we're estimating about $10,000 a year, and that would be for events workers, officials, that kind of thing. So the total for that ad was about $125,000. And what that did was give an entire class of students the opportunity to be engaged in athletics at the 7th grade level. That was a huge service to this community. Opened up options for students who maybe couldn't afford to be part of those kinds of things in outside of school, and it also provided that way to connect with school. In 14-15 then, we had another conversation about the opportunity to add high school bowling. And the board at that time determined that, yes, that was a great ad for our students. It reached a group of students that maybe were not engaged in other extracurricular activities, and so made the decision to go ahead and commit $14,000 to coaching salaries, transportation, an additional $5,000 for a total of $19,000, $20,000. That was, considering what we added, an efficient ad for us to provide additional opportunities for students. And then in 2021, you just made the decision to add high school girls wrestling. You'll remember that we have always allowed our female students to wrestle, but they wrestled in the boys program. And recently, Keisha made the decision that they were going to add a girls division. And in order for our girls to be able to wrestle on the same day at different venues than our young men, our young women needed a coach. And so in order to do that, we added a coaching salary. Those programs are still working together, but we committed $4,500 to coaching salaries for our young women. And so we have added with those three things, with that 7th grade athletics, with bowling, and with the girls wrestling, we've added $150,000 annual cost in the last few years that we're spending on athletics. I would say that that is money well spent when I see the benefits for students. But we have some challenges. Over the last several years, we have had declining gate receipts. We used to have gate receipts from our football program that really did make our athletics self-sustaining. And over the years, gate receipts have declined, and I'll show you a graph of that here in a moment. So we're at a situation where our extracurricular programming is no longer self-sustaining. We have been shifting general fund dollars, and you knew that. You know, we've talked about that each year to be able to support that programming, and this board has been committed to do that. We're making a proposal tonight that we allow advertising to be able to help with some of that funding. So when you look at the athletic fund gate receipts, and as I said, the vast majority of this money comes from football. You can see that in 14-15, we were bringing in about $300,000. And then in 19-20, we're down to about $160,000. Okay, so declining gate receipts is an issue that, again, we want to offer these opportunities for our students, and we know it's important. And so we've been just supplementing out of general fund. Mark?
Do you all have any sense of why it's gone down so much? Any specific thing you can attribute it to, or just a combination of certain?
Step up here and answer that. They can give you a much better answer than I can on that.
I don't think it's just a problem in Salina. I think we see that statewide. I think part of it is that there's so many things that our kids are involved with now with electronics. A lot of kids are going to work. It used to be that we would follow the football team and everybody went. And it's just not the case no more. There's lots of other opportunities and things for kids to do. And a lot of them are that when we talk to some of our students that they're going to go to work because they really have a car and then come to those games. So that's kind of what I foresee anyway of what that is.
I would say that, yes, we are hearing that that's a trend statewide, that's not unique to USD 305. So at this time, we are wanting to make a recommendation on behalf of the USD 305 Athletic Board that you consider expanding the opportunity for local businesses to advertise at our events as a way to increase funding. Okay, so we're talking at our events in our competition facilities. And I want you to know right up front that we have done a review of the policies. I gave you in your board packet a copy of all of the policies. We don't have a board policy that prohibits advertising sales. In fact, we already do sell some advertising, and the gentleman will talk about that in just a moment. And so, but we are wanting to expand that advertising, and because of the way we're wanting to expand it, we really feel like it's a decision that you need to make whether or not you can support that. So you can see in Addendum 1 any related policies for you to review between now and the time that you will be asked to approve this. So with that, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Greg and Ken for them to share with you what the actual proposal is, and then we'll entertain questions.
What do I hit? Forward. Just forward. Right there. I want to mess it up. I'm going to talk to you for just a little bit about some of the current. Oh, okay.
Who's Jim?
Hi, this is Robert again. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right.
All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the current advertising that we're doing in our programs. For a long time, our booster clubs did the sports program advertisements, and they did them together, then they split and did them apart, and then it just kind of fell apart, and Greg and I decided we would just take it over. So right now, we do sports program advertisements. We've probably done that for the last 5 years, I would say. And we actually do them together. So when you buy an advertisement from us, you're going to be in both sports programs. And we feel like that's best for our business partners, so they're not having to pick which school, and the one price is good for two. At the same time, we also started selling advertisements in our Salina Invitational Basketball Tournament program. Those were separate advertisements. And then we started using a system called Game Time. Game Time is basically an online radio station, for lack of a better word, that we use at our events. And it's a service that we pay for. And quite frankly, the biggest reason we wanted to use it was they put the music on there, and we don't have to worry about music that's getting played at our events. It was becoming increasingly difficult to play music at our events that was appropriate for everybody that was there. And as kids would normally do, they would hand you the CD, like 2 seconds, can you play this now? And then all of a sudden you're playing something you don't want up there. Well, with that, it really sounds like a radio station, and it's right. Central has theirs, we have ours. They have little stinger announcements, and so it's personalized to us. But we've had a couple commercials that run on there. It's like a 30-second radio spot is what it is. And so we've had that as well. And then we've been doing a tournament sponsorship for our Salina Invitational Basketball Tournament for probably about the last 5 years. And Salina Regional has been our tournament sponsorship for that. So we have been doing some advertising for the last several years on that regard.
Coach, are you talking on the Game Time advertisements? Are you selling those 30-second spots or 1 minute spots or whatever?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, I'll be honest with you, we haven't done a lot of it, but we have had them most every year. We didn't do them this year because that's the other thing is we decided not to do any advertising, whether program or the Game Time spots this year. Going into this school year, we just didn't know what was around the next corner, and the last thing we wanted to do was sell advertising and then not be able to deliver. And then, of course, we had limited people at our games, so they're not seen quite as much this year. So we suspended all advertising this year. We had some partners that had signed some 3-year agreements, and we just paused them, and they'll still get their 3 years, but we want them to be able to get the full benefit of that and advertise when we have bigger crowds.
You say it's a radio station. Is it online, or is it actually on a radio, or how
It's
do you listen?
online, and we have a computer, and we download the content before each game, and then when we get to the facility, we plug it in, and it plays music, but there'll be radio spots that come through, and there's also sportsmanship announcements. They talk a little bit about South High and some things like that, and of course Centrals would talk about Central High, and so it's just something that we have access to, and then we download the content. It's built for us. We download it, and then we play it before each event.
It's just played at the event.
At the event, yeah.
So it's like you log into Game Time? I mean, how do you get there?
How do we get there?
I mean, how does a person hear it?
You go to the game, and it's on the PA.
Oh, it's on the PA.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
I wasn't very clear, was I? I'm sorry. Yeah, we play it on the
something
PA.
muted.
So instead of just playing music on the PA before warm-up, we use this system, which, number one, guarantees us the ability to have clean and appropriate music. And then we were able to generate a few funds from it as well. Sorry. Okay. So with that, we're looking at doing some expanded advertising opportunities. As far as sales, what we're thinking is that Greg and I, the ADs, will be responsible for the sales. We're doing sales right now with the program ads, so I think it's something we can extend from there. We had some discussions about hiring companies that do this. That's their job. You're probably going to look at about 50% of whatever you earn going back to that company. And so one of the things we do like with us when we're advertising on program advertising, when I sell a program ad to you, 100% of that money goes to the 2 schools. And this would be the same here. And I think that's why we're looking more in that direction. I will tell you this, Greg and I probably are not as great at selling as maybe a company would be, but it's 100% of the funds going back to the schools. And I think that's important to some of the businesses that we're going to be working with. Next on there, approved advertisers. So it'll be limited to obviously certain businesses with the sole purpose of promotion of commercial goods and services, community groups, events, and organizations, and then nonprofit groups and organizations provided such advertising is confined to promotion of district students and programs. What we want to make sure is that you understand that the advertisers will be approved and they will be screened and looked at, and it has to meet our standard, okay? And so what would happen is we would push this out to a lot of our businesses in Salina, and then we would probably contact some of them and ask if there's interest, and then they would probably fill out a request. We have some forms that we use for program advertising. We do a very similar thing here where the person fills out the form, hey, I'm interested in this, and then we would contact them back, and eventually they would sign an advertising agreement with us. And that's what we do with our program ads right now, so it'd be kind of an extension of that. And then, of course, at that time, we would determine, if the business was appropriate to advertise for our school district, and we would have some parameters set in place by our district to make sure that we are having businesses that we want representing our school district. And then we would go from there. The locations that we're looking at, Salina Stadium, the high school gyms, the natatorium, the softball fields, that's what we currently have set in place right now. I think there could be maybe some more things in the future. We don't, we just don't know how this could expand, but ultimately, when we set up our opportunities, that we're looking more at those facilities than we are anything else right now. And I'm going to let Mr. Marion give you a little information. Oh, sorry.
So if you could go back a slide.
Uh-huh.
When you're looking at your locations, I'm questioning as far as tennis, with all the tennis talk that's going on and the possibility of expansion there, are you guys looking at the future so that you don't have to come back? I want to make sure that if we go forward with this, that you've got the authority you need to go ahead and continue to plan without having to say, oh, we got to go back before the board and do all of this. So that's an area with bowling. I watch bowling on TV and you have banners up, and is that in here or?
We actually had this conversation. It's almost like you were listening on the conversation.
Yeah, actually, we talked about if you would like for us to add the tennis courts, that would be a great place for us to do some advertising, and we could come up with a package for that. And then if we want to put a caveat in here that would allow us to expand to other competition facilities, what we were trying to guard against was advertising in classroom spaces. And so we really were trying to keep it in kind of competition facilities, although our gyms are classroom spaces, and our natatorium is a classroom space occasionally. But we were trying to keep it in those athletic facilities. And so if you want us to create some wording that would open it up to where we could advertise in other athletic facilities and develop other packages, we are certainly open to that. And I think the tennis courts are a perfect place for that. If we talk about bowling and the Dean Evans Stadium that we don't own, one of the things that we will need to talk about is they would need to be banners that could be removed. And so, who would be responsible for getting those up and down? And so for some of those areas, it's a matter of convenience. We were thinking areas where we could actually have it stationary there. But we are certainly open to that, Scott.
The only other thing I would ask you about is, I know that we did some streaming of the games for football and stuff like that. Is that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Could you tell me a little bit?
Get to it right there.
Okay,
That's part of my part.
okay.
You gonna tell you, and I'll advance this here.
All right, you're a good man, absolutely. And I think in your packet you have received this, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the platinum partnerships and gold partnerships and silver partnership. Basically, what we're looking at is we were trying to come up with different partnerships for different businesses and where they're at. Obviously, the platinum partnership, you're going to get more for your money than you would if you're a gold or a silver. We're looking at 4 partners if we can find that for the platinum partnership, and a lot of it has to do with we believe we've got 4 spaces by the video board in the at Salina Stadium. So we would just put their 4 logos up there if they are a platinum partner, and then so that's probably the big thing that's with that. They also, as a platinum partner, and again, I know you can read through here, with our video board, we are allowed to do advertisement as far as a actual commercial. So if a business wanted to run a commercial pre-game or post-game or at halftime, we have the capability of doing that. And so if you're a platinum partner, that's one of the perks that you would have that you would not have for a gold, silver partner. And again, I know you guys can read through there and see the differences within those packages. And then when we get down to the bottom, these are, when we get to ticket sponsorships and NFHS Network, which you were talking about, these are individual per year. Ticket partnerships would be something that on the back of the ticket, you know, if you, I'm going to use Great Clips for an example. Great Clips could put a coupon or something on the back of the ticket, and they're advertising on the back of the ticket. When you come in, we'll give you that ticket. Also, we this year also did some ticketing online through Ticket Spigot, and there is a place there where you could have advertisement through that if we continue to use that or a different agency. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about a ticket sponsorship. The NFHS network is what you were talking about. That is video streaming, and our games in the main gym, also in our auxiliary gym at the natatorium. All of the places that our kids are performing right now, with the exception of bowling. Right now, we do not have that capability at the bowling alley. We are working with them on that. The NFHS network is a website where you can watch our student athletes perform. The thing with the NFHS network as well that we like is the majority of our schools in the AVCTL are members. So when you pay for that opportunity to play or to watch your kid play, not only are you going to watch them at home, but you get to watch them on the road as well. But on the NFHS network, there's banners and corner pieces where we can put advertisement, and that's what we were talking about, $300 if somebody wanted to put their logo in the corner, and $500 if they wanted to be on the banner. Question?
Does the NFHS stand for something?
It is the National Federation High School.
National Federation of
High Schools. Yeah.
It's
network.
CASHA at the national level.
Okay.
It's the National Federation. So all of our CASHA rules, we will follow NFHS guidelines.
And that filters down to CASHA.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's national, not local. And then again, these are individual advertising packages, and we have actually done football tailgates in the past as well. But you can see there that you can get a sponsorship, and if you did a football tailgate sponsorship, you get a PA announcement. You can bring your banner, set it outside, even a little booth if you want to talk about your company and what they can offer. So that's what tailgate is. Then we talk about if you just want to advertise in South and Central's main gym only, then you have that capability. And then the same would be true in our auxiliary gyms as well. We would have space for that. And then you can see there that the South softball fields as well, that you could advertise there. And this one is if we have that availability available. The Salina Stadium scoreboard digital advertisement, that would be if we had room for somebody to go ahead and make their commercial and just wanted to just do a commercial. We would do that. The stadium scoreboard signage, $2,000 per year, that would be those 4 spots we talked about if it's available, that Platinum didn't want it. gold member didn't want it, so forth. And then we would have the internal fencing that is around our stadium where you could also put up your signage. And then we see that there for the natatorium as well. The individual packages, when you do it yourself, you have to pay for the creation of that banner. If you do it through one of our packages, we will take care of the cost of that. So that's another advantage if you did a package over if you did the yearly proposal. Yes, sir.
Do you have anything, because I don't see soccer, and soccer's becoming really big. So is there something where they could, or you could actually get sponsorship during soccer season or something like that?
That we would run that through Salina Stadium, anything that happens at Salina Stadium. So football, soccer, they would all be combined for both the fall and spring sports for girls soccer. Track at Salina Stadium, they would all be under that umbrella. But yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. Yeah, that it would just fall under that. With swimming? Yes, and we do have that there where you can advertise there. Yes, ma'am. Click the next one, or where were we at there?
I think it's back to me.
Hey, all right.
And Mr. Marion kind of alluded to this too, but the packages are set up to provide quite a bit more bang for your buck. The individual stuff, if you were just wanting to put a banner or a sign, that individual price is quite a bit more. We're really trying to get people to, hopefully choose one of the package options, the platinum, gold, silver, those types of things. There is more in those, and the value is a little bit better. We've done that with our program advertising. We try to get people to sign a 3-year agreement with us, and when they do that, it can be as much as $50 or $100 off the ad each year. And for us, it gives us the security of knowing you're advertising with us, and we lock you in. And because you're going to be loyal to us, we're going to give you a little bit of a break, and then we try to get people to do that. So that's kind of our thinking on that, but we want that individual option to be available as well. And then you can see the distribution here, 45% at both high schools and then 5% at the middle schools. Our athletic budgets at the high school are quite a bit larger. We have quite a few more programs. And, we're just in a position where, this year's obviously a tough year, and a lot of money seems to be going out. And with our restricted attendance guidelines, we're not bringing in as much as we normally would. So on the graph that you saw before, that's going to get worse obviously this year, and a lot of that's due to the pandemic. So we're hoping that we can move back to some normalcy sooner than later. But that's the proposed distribution that we would have in place. We think that the middle schools, even though 5% isn't a ton of money, it's some money for their programs as well, and obviously we could look at some of those things as well. So I know you guys have asked some questions. Do you have others? This would be a time. I think that wraps up what we're going with. We'll go ahead and start with. Okay. $6 for an adult and $4 for a student, and those are established by our league.
Okay, so everybody has that.
Yes.
Everybody in the
Has it
league.
been that for a long time? I can't remember what.
Quite a while. It was
Okay.
5 and 3, but it's been quite a while. We've gone to 6 and 4.
And
We had some discussion probably within the last year about bumping it up another $1, and you just get to that point where you want to be affordable,
Right, for
family
your
of 4.
parents,
So right now our
absolutely.
league has not made that jump, but we're at 6 and 4.
And do people still buy Pride tickets, and is that still?
Not this year, but
Right,
yes,
in the
we
past,
still will
right.
offer that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So journalism students no longer selling any advertising for sports stuff, right? You guys are the only ones doing it.
Correct.
For the program ads, yes, that's my understanding. I think they're selling yearbook ads and
That's all they do
things
now.
of that nature, but it's a separate
Okay.
newspaper and yearbook ads, but
Okay.
it's a separate deal.
And that kind of comes to my last question is, I had kids in journalism, so they would come ask for sports ads for our personal business. Do you guys have a team that is looking at kids in our school district and parents who own businesses and looking at who we should be reaching out to? You
We're
guys
your
are
team.
it. That's a lot.
So I and team.
That's a lot on 2 people.
Yeah, and we've got other things to do too.
Yeah, you got a few.
But we had this discussion, and we just felt like, we're kind of doing it already.
Uh-huh.
We think we've got some time in the summer, maybe where we can do some more things to try to help the cause. And I won't say, and Mrs. Excellent, I'm going to let you jump in. I'm not going to say never. We may try this for a year, and we may need to relook how we're doing it.
Yeah, you might look in the materials that we provided you, there was some comparative information with some other districts
Right, I saw that.
that they had talked to. And 2 of those districts actually had hired a company and one of them was making $18,000 a year and another was making 20. And we feel like with 2 schools and with the visibility that advertisers would have, that we can outdo that. But we may have to make a decision that if everybody is wanting to buy individual things, we may have to make a decision that we can't handle that and that we need to contract with somebody to do that. Right now, though, we'll try it and see, and then we'll reassess.
Well, and I guess even not necessarily professional help, but a team of people from your school that say, hey, did you know so-and-so owns Wendy's? Do you know so-and-so? Because you may not know that, or somebody on your team. To me, that's how we do the marathon, finding somebody to help run it. Who's at that school, who's involved. I just didn't know if you even had that group of people helping you.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, because any help that we can get in regards to at least contacting people or, because a lot of times one of the keys to getting somebody to advertise with you is a connection.
Absolutely.
And we need to find that connection, and we'll need some help doing that. The other thing I'd like to bring up that I don't think we said, we feel like the prices of the advertising is very much in line with a lot of the other schools that we investigated. And take Dodge City, for example. Dodge City's killing it. I mean, it's unbelievable what they do out there. But they have one team. And our prices that we've kind of put in this, we've done for both of us. And so there's going to be a football game at the stadium every Friday night. There's going to be soccer every Tuesday, Thursday. There's football game every Monday. And so we feel like with 2 high schools, we do feel like there's more exposure there than some of the other districts have, but we feel like the pricing is similar. Because once again, kind of like the program ad, we feel like it's a pretty good value. You can reach a lot of people, and we want to be able to include both schools at the same time.
And will there be a press release that this is going to be an option? Because it's been talked about by parents for years.
Yeah, we will work with, if you approve this, we will work with the Public Information Office on a press release to get information out there. And then, we did include in your packet the paperwork to actually sign up so that we know that you're interested. We probably will do some of that through mailing and personal contacts too. But we definitely will work with Jennifer to get the word out on multiple occasions through our social media and through media outlets as well.
Okay. Well, I want to say that it all makes me a little queasy because these are things that we need our students to do, and it's another way for the state to get out of paying for anything. But I guess, they haven't been, it's been a chore to get the money to fund education as it needs to be. This seems like it gives them another excuse not to. But I guess the other thing is that it does worry me that it's in the classroom, in the gym and the natatorium, where those are classroom spaces. And and it does, companies advertise because it's good for the companies. If they are just parents and they just want to help the students, that's great. But most companies advertise because it's good for them, because it gives people a better impression of them. And so the companies that aren't advertising don't get that promotion, and the students are thinking like McDonald's is great because they have their ad all over our sports facilities, and that might not be the best place always to go out to eat. But I guess I just want to say it makes me a little queasy, but I understand that there's need for money and that this is a place we can get it. I think we just have to be careful about where it goes and what companies it is. That's all. I know.
I do have one other question. What impact is our athletics having on our students as far as them continuing education into college? Do we have those numbers, or do we even track those numbers, or?
We don't track it specifically, and perhaps it may be something that we should do. We probably think that we have 10 to 15 students that sign
Each school.
at each school each year to go on and further their athletic careers. Now, some of those have been a preferred walk-on at K-State, and they're still signing, so there's not a financial scholarship, but you can't be a preferred walk-on unless you're invited. So we don't have really a monetary figure to attach to that, but most of our kids that sign have some type of a scholarship that goes that direction. And I would say there's some years, one year we had like 10 football kids sign, but then the next year there may only be 2, so it kind of varies, but I would say 10 to 15 is probably a fair number over the course of a year for each school.
Yeah, I think being a former athlete, as you guys are, I'm more interested in the number, not necessarily the value, because I think it's important that those kids get that opportunity. And I think it also shows that we have a coaching staff that's able to transfer those skills to get those kids to the point where they can even be asked to be a preferred walk-on. Understanding that even down the line, a lot of those preferred walk-ons end up with a full ride scholarship, which saves tons of money for that particular family. So I think it's also a good selling point to say we are teaching the right skill sets, and these kids are getting those opportunities to continue. I don't care what level it's at.
Mm-hmm.
What's important is that they get that opportunity to continue to play and get that education. That's what I think we're driving towards. So those are good numbers. So thank you.
Question here.
Oh.
Okay, so hello, Jim, on the live stream. Thank you both for being with us tonight. This will come back for action on our February agenda.
It will.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on, school board reports and upcoming dates of importance. No upcoming dates of importance listed in our packet. We'll start with Mark down there on any board report.
So it's been a long time since we met last, but
Yeah.
the day after we last met, I attended a Smoky Hill Education Service Center board meeting on Zoom, and it's been a while ago, but a couple of quick highlights. They approved Mr. Modelmogs, who's the executive director. We approved his means by which he'll be evaluated, his goals, all that sort of thing. That's pretty important for everybody to be aware of. And again, it's been a while ago, but I was really pleased their budget allowed us to approve a small Christmas kind of incentive for all employees of Smoky Hill. So that was a nice thing to be able to do, is recognize that well. And then the other thing was on December 18th, I was able to deliver the lunch meals to Hughesner Elementary. Just an exciting time. It was very windy that day, and the ladies at the building were kind enough to meet me at the car with the cart. And then we all got exercise because the wind blew things off the cart, and we got to jog the parking lot and fun things. So it was good recognition, and in our packet, I noted several thank you letters from people. I just want to reinforce that was a great issue.
Thank you.
I have a few things. I delivered lunches to Schilling, I think the same day as you did. I think the building must have been appropriately situated so it blocked the wind. So, but it was fun to deliver them. I listened to Ms. X-Line on the radio, KINA. She did a good job as usual back in December. I did make a video of my Kansas Day songs. You can see my picture in the Arts Infusion guide, and that I did the Kansas Day program. We didn't figure out any way I could do a video of my songwriting workshop, and it looks like I'm going to have to do, I'll be doing the 7th grade advanced Kansas Day program by Zoom, which I have yet to figure out how I will do that, but, it's always a challenge to get seventh graders to sing along with you. And it may not work on a video or on Zoom. So we'll see how that comes out on about January 29th. I attended the North Central Kansas Health Report, Zoom. I felt like I was doing that as a part of the school board, and it was interesting because the doctors around this part of the state were just exhausted, and they talked about a doctor in Lyons talked about a guy in her area who had fallen off a ladder and broken his ribs, and it took him 9 hours to find a hospital to send him to because everybody's beds were full of COVID patients. So they were all tired. I attended a KASB legislative update. I think that was last Friday, and they mentioned that the new nominee for U.S. Secretary of Education is Miguel Cardona, who's, they said he's a good guy. He's sort of the Randy Watson of Connecticut, and he's a former teacher. So that is incoming President Biden's nominee. And the KASB suggested we all urge our federal legislators to fund expanded broadband to help with what's called the homework gap. They had a bill that was almost passed, funding a lot of that, but at the last minute, most of the broadband money was removed. So they still have that to do. In Topeka, they said that more of the legislators this term have been elected who are in favor of private schools and vouchers for private schools. I haven't asked our local people their opinion about that, but Stephen Howe works at the Cornerstone Classical School, although he did tell me he went to public school in Manhattan when he was growing up. And Clark Sanders' kids went to Salinas Catholic schools. I think he may have gone to public schools, although I don't know that. Let's see. And KASB suggested if we are talking to our legislators, we can't just say that vouchers are a bad idea. We have to be ready to explain our reason for supporting the public schools and opposing vouchers. And there are a number of good reasons, but we have to have them ready to say when we're in touch with our legislators. The new legislators surely don't understand these complicated school funding formula with its weightings and everything, so we can help educate them about that funding formula, since education funding is always a big discussion item. Finally, they talked about the fact that almost everything's virtual means that more people will be able to testify, and that we should look to find parents and family members who can speak positively about what we've done with the new money we got and what we're doing in our schools, because they may actually be able to testify just as well as anyone else without leaving town. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah.
Metal Arc.
Very good. Scott.
I was on the Zoom meeting as well as, I believe there was a number of us that were on that Zoom meeting. Also, we had a Heartland Zoom meeting, and they will be actually doing recruitment meetings next week. That's really about it.
I too delivered a meal or appreciation luncheon to Grace Stewart School, and they were real helpful to meet me at the door with the cart, and the wind wasn't too bad that day, so I was lucky. Attended a Zoom meeting for the USD 305 Health Council last evening, and the summer food service program is still being utilized, and that starts September 8th, and it will run through May 27th. It's a free breakfast and lunch for our students. Elementary and middle school participation is really good. High school students are slightly less participation in the program, and don't know if it's due to the hybrid style where they eat at home before they come to school, or they go from school to home and eat. But anyway, those lunches and breakfasts are free. Also for remote learners, they can pick up their lunches as well. And it was interesting, the process at Central High School. They have one booth and they put in their menu or their request, and then they go down, and then there's a delivery. And one of the biggest problems had been lack of sacks. And I never even thought of lack of sacks. But anyway, sort of like the lack of toilet paper, well, we got a lack of sacks for the meals. But anyway, it's really been wonderful, and they're very glad that they've been able to do this. And there's the first few weeks, it was a challenge to know how many sack lunches and things they would need. And we all know that nutrition is a very valuable part in the learning process. But anyway, they've got it down to a pretty fine science now. And if there was food left over, they would take it to rescue mission in some of the places here in Salina, so it was not totally wasted. Starting January 25th, there'll be a new menu that will go out, so the students will have that availability. It will once again depend on supplies and what they can or cannot obtain from the factories and food distribution centers. The school nurses are busy tracking and, of course, educating families on the COVID pandemic, and there's so much different information out there that it is really interesting of what questions people have, but they're trying to help the public health department in clarifying some of those questions. There is a pandemic electronic benefit transfer card that families can utilize and apply for, and so that was very nice to know as well. Tammy Walker was represented in the center, and they encourage that we take care of ourselves and have breast and colon exams. And United Way was represented, and they encouraged that there's a volunteer tax program up and coming. So call them to see if you're available or
eligible.
Yeah, that you're can apply for the tax program. And they're across from the Cozy, and they have moved. But the other thing was that the Saline County Health Department has hired a Melissa McCoy, and she is the public information person to help with the COVID communications. And Lane Norris conducted this meeting. It was very, very nice. And, you know, as a board, we want to make sure the students and staff stay safe and healthy, and that's a real big concern. And so from nutrition to making sure you have the COVID rules and regs, and it was a good meeting. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Good. I have no report. Moving on to the next item 9, superintendent's report with Superintendent Exline.
Okay, just a couple updates. During the winter recess, I was able to go meet with Jerry Moran and the leaders of the other Salina public entities out at the former Schilling Air Force Base site. Jerry was interested in if we had a resolution that we felt comfortable with, if there was any support that we needed, and we just had some kind of informal conversation. And so the media was there, and it was really nice that he reached out to us. Has been very supportive through that process, and so I just wanted to share that. I also wanted to share with you that on Thursday, the 7th, Jennifer came in and I got to go and be at Hughesner when Miss Bills was recognized as a State Horizon winner. And so the Horizon Award is for first-year teachers who show excellence in the classroom. There are 32 state awards each year, and Miss Bills was recognized as one of those. And so that really is a testament to her excellence in the classroom, and was a really special day, and it was fun to be part of that. I also wanted you to know that last Friday, our nurses and health aides were able to get their COVID vaccine. I got an email today from County Health, and they are still working through phase 1. But we have started conversations about what it will look like when 305 employees are eligible for the vaccine, and how exactly that will work. And we're looking at a way that we might be able to do that on site to make it easier for our staff who wishes to be vaccinated. So more information will come on that. I do not have a timeline. We are hopeful that we will know something more soon. But it really depends on how fast the vaccines get in and get into the arms of the people that are in phase 1. And then at that point, we'll move forward. I did also want to share with you that we had 364 staff members that took advantage of the free COVID testing, that rapid COVID testing that we did before the holiday break. The purpose of that really was just for ease of mind as our staff was going into the holiday break. And I want to thank Salina Regional Health Center and ComCare for helping us with that and reaching out to us and offering that to us. But out of the 364 staff members, we had 5 positives. And so that data came back, and I just thought that I would share that with you. And so I'm glad that we were able to keep those families safe. With that, the last thing that I want to say is January is Board Recognition Month, and boy, do you deserve recognition. I can't imagine doing what I do without your leadership and without your advocacy for our schools. And I would put you up against any board. And so I thank you for that, and I really appreciate what you do for the students and families of Salina and for me as a leader as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. We have no executive session for personnel, and no action agenda 2, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Thank you. And a second by Emma. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you all for joining us tonight. This will conclude our live stream. Have a great evening.